you with the inspirational change makers that are dedicating their lives to the latest innovations, ideas and solutions that support the way we farm and grow for a better future. Now, if you've just joined us for the very first time listening or watching along live to Sarah's Country, I'm your host, Sarah Perriam, and our Changemaker show, it happens weekly on a Wednesday, and it's produced in alliance with the newsroom at Farmers Weekly, New Zealand's largest rural newspaper, and of course you can go to farmersweekly.co.nz for the daily stories. And they help us uncover these amazing and wonderful characters in our New Zealand's primary sector that are making change. Now, if you do have a super cool changemaker story and you may know of a person or an organisation that's doing great things to help us achieve our vision as a world-leading agricultural sector, please do get in touch because we love to tell people. That's what we're in the business of doing. So email me, sarah@sarahscountry.com as well. Now, once a month, Farmers Weekly's talented videographer, Ash Robinson, heads off around beautiful Aotearoa, New Zealand to produce the on-farm video stories. And they're highlighting the passion our farmers and growers have getting out of bed every day to produce the most finest food and fashion. And this month, Rangatiki couple have used an initiative to combine their strong wool woes with their powerful historic family story, as well as some pretty sassy social media marketing. Sam and Sophie Hurley have been on a journey from handpiece to handbag to create a new business called Honest Wolf. Yes, there is such a thing, and it's at Papanui Station in the rugged hill country in the North Island, where fashionistas around the globe are loving these handcrafted wool felt accessory pieces. And Sophie Hurley will join us later on in the show. Then we will learn more about this sustainable beef patty trial. And has it been a success? And also, I'd love to know what determines sustainable beef. Well, we're going to hear from the New Zealand Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, the chair Grant Bunting, and where the $350,000 of 50-50 funded project from industry and government has gone to achieve what will be known as a sustainable beef patty. To close the show, how can hop breeders keep up with the forever changing consumer preferences in craft beer? I'm not a beer drinker much myself, but if I do know a thing or two about wine, not all beer is made the same. And particularly in the rise of popularity of craft beer, you will also note that not all hops are the same. So we're going to hear from plant and food researchers scientist and hop breeder Kerry Templeton to outline the new hop cultivars with the unique flavours that are needed to achieve these premium craft beers. But to kick off the Changemaker show, we have a game-changing smart irrigation pivot developed by Feilding's software engineers, and it will be able to not only disperse water, but also monitor crop health and even fix itself. Zimmatic's technology strategy advisor, Stu Bradbury, will be up with us very shortly here on Sarah's Country.
This is Sarah's Country, produced in alliance with Farmers Weekly, the place New Zealand farmers turn to for a trusted source of in-depth agricultural journalism. Stay connected to the matters that matter most by subscribing to My Daily Digest at farmersweekly.co.nz.
Oh, nice boots.
Yeah, thanks. They're new.
Ben, you alright?
Oh, yeah, sorry, mate. Just meerkatting pretty hard, eh? Yeah. I just said to myself, Ben, work hard. You deserve new boots.
Well, with the rise of COVID, webinars have been a fantastic way to be able to extend knowledge to our farming community. And there was one webinar last week that had an overwhelming number of farmers attend to find out more about what is now known as a smart Pivot. This is our irrigation pivots that a group of software engineers in Feilding have been tinkering away with to develop a prototype of what will be a game-changing irrigation system. Lindsay Corporation, which produces the Zimmatic brand of pivot irrigators, have gone into smart pivots, which will be a new category of mechanised irrigation that moves beyond traditional water application and into an array of other things such as crop health capabilities, diagnosing its own operating faults, how good would that be, and even launching a drone to manage crops at leaf level. This is incredible. A software engineer's dream. And of course, one of these software engineers that is behind this is Zimmatic's technology strategy advisor, Stu Bradbury. Stu, to me, it seems like, engineers' dream to tinker with this huge technology that's going around on a regular basis. So what other things can you attach to it? How much fun are you having at the moment?
Yeah, the team was salivating when this got handed over to us. We've been working on pivots for the last I've been doing it for the last over 10 years, and we've come up with so many ideas, heard so many customer stories, and thought of so many things that would be cool to do that this was just the amalgamation of all of this, and everyone was into it. Yeah.
So you had that big melting pot of all farmers that have been out there utilising pivot irrigators over the past decade going, I wish it could do this and I wish it could do that, taking that feedback. And how do you start to prioritise what's practical?
With great difficulty. So one of our philosophies is customer-led innovation. So really what prioritises it is listening to our customers. So, when we're hearing something over and over and over and we can see massive value in doing something, well, then that'll creep up towards the top of our priority list. So we'll share ideas back and forth, but ultimately it comes down to our end users who steer us.
So there's an incredible technology known as variable rate irrigation. We've heard on Sarah's Country around fertigation is some of those. But when it comes to managing crops, what exactly will that look like into the future?
Yeah, so everything's the resolution at which we manage things is getting narrower and narrower. Okay, so one of the things that when we developed variable rate irrigation a little while ago now, we had this vision that you would control almost sort of to individual plant level or the requirements of different areas. And so what we're starting to see now is with technology improving, that vision's becoming more and more realizable and accessible. And with the smart pivot, what we're doing is allowing the farmer or the grower to not have to think so much and let more of the machinery and the technology do that thinking for them to enable that sort of management.
And so this is really starting to maximise efficiency of precision agriculture in general. What's the sort of technology behind sensors and those sorts of things that's on the smart pivot prototype?
Yeah, so there's a few different things. Some are sensors that are on the pivot, some are sensors that aren't even related to the pivot. So, for example, sensors on the pivot, we're working in partnership with Microsoft to develop cameras, to look at things like flat tyres, sensing if a tyre is going flat, looking at gearbox and motor operation, looking at trends going on in them to see if we could predict when maintenance might be required. So that's a few examples. And then there's things that aren't on the pivot at all. So, most people know about APIs now, and different companies being able to communicate with each other up in the cloud. So one company that we've got another partnership with is Tyrannus, and Tyrannus are well known for their satellite imagery and other drone imagery, that sort of thing. We can take and analyze that data to feed back to the smart pivot as well. All of this information coming to the user's hands and being presented in a way that they can actually make decisions on what they want to do with it.
But for those who aren't familiar with the benefits of pivots from an irrigation perspective, what environmental outcomes can be achieved when you can do things like detecting ponding, blocked sprinklers, and being able to turn them on and off as well?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because, straight away we think if there's block sprinklers, there's not going to be enough water going on crops, they're not going to grow as well. But a lot of people, I guess, don't realise, they may know, but they don't realise to the full extent that actually putting too much water on can be just as bad or worse than putting not enough water on. So if you've got areas of ponding, there's all sorts of problems that come along with that. First, you might get your machinery stuck because it starts getting bogged in these areas. But then you've also got the environmental aspects of leaching and runoff. So too much water, you're going to be leaching water through the soil profile, taking nutrients with it. You don't want to be putting nutrients on your farm, paying to put them on, and then just washing them through the soil profile. So massive environmental benefits to being able to micromanage all of these different areas underneath your irrigator, so that you get the best outcome in terms of crop, profit, and environmental aspects.
What's involved in developing the software? And Zimmatic is a large company, and working through the process of a technology development like this.
That's a big question. What's involved? To start with, I guess, as I mentioned before, there's gathering all of that information from end users, learning. One of the key things for me personally is really understanding the problem before we even start thinking about creating the solution. So we want to get it, take that ponding issue that we just talked about with leaching, etc. We want to really understand what's going on there so that we can then engineer the best possible solution. From there, it's making sure that all of our engineers know what is going to be required in that solution, and then iterating through, different ideas, different prototypes, and testing these with our customers, testing them out in the field, getting everything up to a stage where it's really robust, bulletproof before releasing it to the market. So, it takes quite a while, but perseverance. Nothing really good was really easy. You've got to put in the hard work, and it'll pay off.
I've got a couple of ideas. Can I add to your pot? What about being able to censor lambs to get out of the way as wheels move around to predict them? Is that possible?
Yeah, absolutely possible. And lambs is here. Lambs one thing. You don't have to look very far on the internet to find pictures of irrigators that have run over vehicles. Some have fallen on houses, all sorts of things like that. To be able to sense what's going on. If tower alignment's a big one. So if a tower goes slightly out of alignment, a pivot wheel might miss a bridge over a creek, for example, and fall into a creek. So we can sense all of these different things and make sure that either we stop the machine or we correct actions before, I'll call it, disasters.
And when we're getting into, a lot of automation on farm and AI technology in animal monitoring with collars, is there any way we can have sort of an invisible fence line that shifts brakes nice and slowly so we don't have to be out there in the wet doing it?
Yeah, there's all sorts of companies working on things like invisible fence lines. I'm sure that it's coming. Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's a lot of fun. I've often thought, so every time I stare at a pivot, I think, what else could you use it for? So that's why I'm super excited to see this. But let's finish off on how on earth does a smart pivot launch a drone?
Yeah. So one of the things that we look at is the pivot can't be everywhere in the field at once. So if, for example, using satellite imagery, we pick up an area that's on the other side of the field to where the pivot is, and we want to see what's going on in that area with a bit higher resolution, we're working on some functionality that a drone could launch, go and inspect that area, figure out, okay, what have we got going on here? Is there some ponding? Is there some sort of crop disease going on? And then feed that information back into the system. So yeah, it's that's a job that normally you might send an agronomist out to do, but people aren't available at the drop of a hat. So why not figure out a way to do it ourselves?
Absolutely. Now, of course, we talked about a webinar. It was last Thursday. What was some of the main feedback that you were getting and questions coming in that was consistent?
Probably around the webinar was really around showing the user interface, what the user would expect to do, and some of the feedback that we got was, hey, look, this is really good. How much can it do to save us thinking? So what we're thinking about really hard is how do we ease the burden, the amount of thinking that the farmer has to do, so they can free up their time and effort to concentrate on other things. And the feedback we got on what people were looking at was really positive around that.
Yeah, and I understand that due to large amounts of interest and requests from those who participated or wanted to, they wanted to see more from Zimmatic, and they've scheduled another extended live stream event they want you to know more about. So we will attach the link to that webinar in the description of this podcast episode below, as well as in social, but you can check out more details about that webinar, which will be coming up, and you can ask your questions. Head to the Facebook page Zimmatic ANZ for more information as well. So thank you so much there to Stu Bradbury from Lindsay in Feilding. What an incredible innovation, certainly making change, and where this could go. The coolest thing is about not so much what the prototype is, but the ideas that will be stimulated of technologies that could plug in, and that interoperability is the direction we need to go as a country. So everything is talking to each other. Wouldn't that be bliss? Now, it's not every day that you get to learn about the journey of your handbag, and all the way from a handpiece. This is a sharing handpiece as well. So this is my handbag that I got for Christmas, and it's been one of my most favourite Christmas presents, my Honest Wolf handbag. Up next, we're going to hear from the maker of Honest Wolf and passionate sheep farmer in the North Island, Sophie Hurley, on the journey from taking wool to fashion.
This is Sarah's Country. Catch the latest on the matters that matter most wherever you are. Listen to Sarah's Country on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple or Google Podcasts. Try asking Alexa or Siri, play Sarah's Country on podcast.
Meat is definitely still our biggest income earner, but once upon a time wool did used to be a large part of the income, and over time that slowly declined.
To see the price that many farmers have been getting is not of equal value to the product itself. There is a big push behind wool in the country at the moment. We see there will be a turning point where wool's qualities will be realised by a larger market.
Okay, you ready to go? We're Sam and Sophie Hurley, running a sheep and beef operation up the Turkana Valley. Papanui Estate is a sheep and beef breeding finishing operation, wintering 25,000 ewes alongside a beef trading operation. We've been farming this hill country since the late 40s, starting from my grandfather Ray Hurley. We've all just followed in his footsteps down from my father, and now to me and Sophie alongside my brother Jack and sister Kate.
We're close to Sam's family. They live about an hour away on the finishing block. Yeah, it's a good family operation. Last year we had our wee baby Harry, and I wanted to be able to work from home up on the farm, be part of the family business. When supermarket plastic bags were getting removed from the country, we thought that the properties of wool, being temperature regulating, sustainable, strong, biodegradable, we thought there was a good opportunity to use our wool for a reusable shopping bag. So we got a few samples made, and from there we built our range out into various products. Tote bags, overnighter bags, laptop sleeves, wallets, caps, everyday products that people can use so they have a sustainable option. We have the mailman come up every day to collect our parcels, takes them off and we can do overnight shipping, which is pretty crazy when we live up in the middle of Turkana Valley, and yeah, you can get a bag the next day.
We currently produce about 170,000 kilos of wool a year. Normally it's shorn and then gone on the truck, and then we don't really know what happens with it after then, carpet or other things. But it's amazing to see it leave the farm and then come back in these innovative designs of caps or bags. And
Should be 20 centimetres different.
our goal is one day to hopefully be able to use our whole wool clip. That's our focus. So we've got a lot of bags to sell to get there. So this is the map of Papanui, Charlotte.
Whoa.
The burn, raised after Sam's grandfather.
No free.
No 3.
A main contributor of purchasing these properties was the income off the wool clip. So I think our grandparents would be quite happy to see us having a crack at revitalising wool off our properties and creating something out of what's already there.
A lot of the conversations that we have are from people that said that they want to do something similar. When I read those sorts of messages, it brings it back home, because that's exactly how I was feeling a couple of years ago. I was driving in and out to a job that I loved, but it was a long drive, and I wanted to be able to work from home, up on the farm, be part of the family business. We would like to drive the message for wool, and I think our story is relatable to so many of our customers. Hopefully it gives them the confidence to do the same.
Well, it's not often on the show I get to unpack the journey behind one of my favourite items. And hashtag this is not sponsored, but myself and my partner ended up giving each other both products from the same company. And this beautiful Honest Wolf handbag has been one of the best things I've ever had. Again, not sponsored. It genuinely is fantastic. And the story behind it is just as good. And we have it here for you on the Changemaker Show. A Rangatiki couple used their initiative in terms of the price of strong wool. We know if you're following Sarah's Country, it's not the best shape. And they put their entrepreneurial spirit to combine their family story with, of course, some social media nous to create a new business that they could run from their farm, Papanui Station. Now, Sam and Sophie Hurley are third generations to farm at Papanui Estate, which was started by Sam's grandfather Ray in the 1950s. This all forms part of this month's on-farm story brought to you by Farmers Weekly, and you can, of course, check that out online at the moment as well. It's a fantastic video showcasing the young farming couple's journey into looking into new avenues for wool a couple of years ago, all kicked off by what to do about the single-use plastic shopping bag. And it has led to a business called Honest Wolf, and Sophie Hurley joins us now. Sophie, super excited to have you on Sarah's Country, and also loving promoting, of course, my favourite item in my wardrobe, of course, my handbag. I use it every single day. Congratulations, first and foremost, on what a wonderful business.
Oh, thank you. Well, just quickly, I had to keep that quite a secret when both you and your partner got each other products for Christmas. I had to, do a bit of a secret squirrel there, but I'm glad you both got a surprise. But yeah, thank you for having me. It's cool to be with you.
And can I just point out, I didn't get him a handbag because there's amazing Honest Wolf woolen caps as well. Now, of course, where did it all start? What's the inspiration behind Honest Wolf, Sophie?
Started a couple of years ago, so back in 2018 when plastic bags were being banned from the country. My husband Sam and I, we just discussed that there could be an alternative. Using wool with a combination of that being banned from the country and our wool prices, we knew that the there could be a better way to use the wool and get a better return on the valuable product that we see it was not being reflected in the price. So we thought we could come up with a alternative a plastic bag, and then we made a couple of samples up of our first product range, the casual shopper, and then from there we built out our range once we saw an opportunity arise, I guess.
What's involved in going from prototype to commercial production of something like this in New Zealand when we've, not got the best of manufacturing opportunities?
Yeah, it was quite a difficult one. So a lot of people that I spoke to actually told me to stop before I even started, and I guess it gave me a bit of determination to drive to find out more what we could do. But because of the manufacturing available in New Zealand at the moment, in comparison to what it was years ago, it is pretty tough to go through the process of getting a sample made in New Zealand and let alone make it to the quality you want. Sorry, not in New Zealand, outside of New Zealand, because we are at the moment sending our wool internationally to get felted and made into our products and then returned back to New Zealand. So that process is just a lengthy experience, and language barriers and time difference. It's been a struggle, but it's been a fun struggle.
Well, it has, and thank you so much for the struggle you've gone to for us to have these beautiful products. And of course, when it comes to storytelling, that must be a lot of fun when it comes to the marketing, that you've been able to tell the story of where it comes from and be transparent about it.
Yeah, I guess social media's been a big way of getting our story out there. So we've had a quick response from the rural market on our products. The connection from our story is really relatable to many other farmers around New Zealand. But we're trying to get that story across to the urban consumer as well, I guess by making our name, which we can get into, a bit of a fun urban name that isn't directly related to any product in particular. It's a way of us getting our story across to them through the farm, through Instagram stories, and they see the background of how we treat our animals and follow all animal health guidelines, but then see the end product leave our farm as well. So it's been a great journey to be able to communicate with our customers that start to end product.
Well, of course, let's hear about the story behind the name. It is a very cool name, Honest Wolf. Is there such a thing?
Yes, so we got the name, I guess, from using honest materials. So all our products are made from our wool off our farm, and New Zealand leather. So we just showcase our wool and the qualities of the wool and how the animal was bred, and how I guess their journey of life on the farm. And then the wolf part of the name comes from being a leader among the pack. We wanted to hopefully encourage others to use wool in new ways as well. We just feel that there needs to be, we're a part of a big drive of what others can do as well to help push the goodness of the natural material that it is. So among the pack of others.
And you certainly have led the pack, Sophie, as a young mum in rural isolation. How are you finding the challenges of running a business?
It's been a fun challenge. So I guess, do you mean with being a mum as well?
Yeah, and balancing it all.
Balancing it. I guess we actually originally planned to launch in March in 2020, but then obviously COVID arrived and that altered things. So it led to Harry our little son being a little bit older, and actually probably in the end it was a better time to launch anyway with him a few more months in him. But it's been a bit of a juggle, and we're just working through it like any other mum does, I guess. Figuring out, and a lot of late nights and early mornings, and trying to get him involved as much as we can during the more physical labour times where he can help me pack.
Oh,
Yeah.
very cute. And of course, follow Honest Wolf on Instagram for the behind the scenes involved to see some of those photos as well. What would be some of your advice? I actually know a lot of rural women that would love to proceed on with ideas they've got to turn their wool, what they're not getting in, very good prices for at all, into it, but they just don't know where to start. How could you encourage them to follow along in that pack that you've created?
Yeah, I guess I fully relate to that. I've always had a drive to do something on our own and create a business, and there'll be so many others there exactly the same. And I was driving in and out of work about an hour and a quarter each way each day, and it just gave me a lot of time to think about what we could do. But it's getting over those initial hurdles that seem so big and scary, and but we're actually, if you just ask for help and ask around, and you can make things happen. But it just I guess requires to keep going, even when people do tell you to stop before you even start. But yeah, it's a great way to be a part of the business, but use your own skills and work around your own family life, I guess.
And of course, an extremely supportive partner, your business partner and life partner, Sam.
Yeah, he's been great. So we work. He does what he would normally do on the farm day to day, and then when he comes in and out of the farm during the day and at night time, we discuss various things. And I guess his biggest drive is to, instead of seeing the wool at what he used to, just see the wool leave at the end of shearing on the bales and not really know where it's going or what it's headed into. Now he can actually see the wool leaving and then arriving back in our products and then leaving in a mail truck to go to customers in an actual product. And I guess that's his big drive to keep him going during the day when the wool prices aren't as great as what they had previously been, but we're trying to change what we can from our small point of view. Yeah.
Extremely inspiring, Sophie. Thank you so much. And I'm excited to launch the fact that we have an Honest Wolf overnight bag to give away. Thank you so much to Sam and Sophie Hurley for being our very first prize giveaway here on Sarah's Country. It's valued at $389. You can go to Honest Wolf's website to check out the details of it. It is a statement piece. It's absolutely beautiful, and you can go on the draw to win. All you need to do is text the word prize to 4040 and put your name and your location, and you will go in that draw. We're going to keep that open until the 3rd of March. Please don't miss it, because it's a fantastic prize to win. This wonderful overnight bag from Honest Wolf. It's Sophie Hurley there from Papanui Station and Honest Wolf, joining us as one of our very many change makers on this week's Changemaker of Sarah's Country. Now, after the break, just how sustainable is a New Zealand sustainable beef patty? Well, there's been 350 grand poured into it from both industry and government, and New Zealand Roundtable for Sustainable Beef Chair Grant Bunting will join us to talk about the progress from the trial.
This is Sarah's Country. Join the conversation. Have thoughts on an interview? Or have you got questions you want answered by a future guest? Let us know. Email sarah@sarahscountry.com.
Well, a sustainably produced New Zealand beef patty is set to become the new norm following a year-long trial to develop a verified sustainable beef model that provides transparency to its customers. The key players in the red meat industry have partnered together with Ministry for Primary Industry, Sustainable Food and Fibre Futures Fund, Triple F, to develop the model for producing independently verified sustainable beef through the entire supply chain. and has led to a project known as the Sustainable Beef Patty that's been under trial. New Zealand Roundtable for Sustainable Beef Chair Grant Bunting joins us now on Sarah's Country, making a change to our beef patties, Grant. What was wrong with them in the first place?
I don't know whether there's anything wrong with them, but no, again, look, this has been as you said, it's been on the go for about a year now, and it's just largely in response to the fact that there is an increasing rhetoric. I'd say it's certainly not mainstream, and our challenge is going to be scale, but there is a discussion around translating a lot of the sustainability arguments into the product. So we were quite confident that we'd be able to achieve it on farm, and there's a bit of work to be done then. But as you said, this actually then brings in the processing plants as well.
So when it comes to the entire supply chain, which parts of them need to be more sustainable?
Well, I think this is one of the challenges, because it's a bit like the regen ag argument. Sustainability is not particularly well defined. And it can mean anything to anybody. So, we sought to tack it on, or not tack it on, that's a bit unfair. We aligned it up with the NZFAP Plus standard. It's a draft standard, but it builds upon the base FAP framework. And that seeks to define sustainability around, your traditional considerations to farming practice in terms of animal welfare and husbandry, but it goes to the extent of land use. It brings into your farm management practice by way of planning and soils, and it goes as far as well-being, right? So it's very broad and includes biodiversity as another component as well. I don't think any of those particularly needed attention per se. The one that we probably struggled with the most was biodiversity. And it's like a lot of these claims that we take back to farm, it's not that we're not doing or practicing that behaviour, it's just that often we can't demonstrate it. And a lot of the challenges were around making sure that where we're operating in a certain way, we're recording evidence of that so it can be independently verified. That's the key.
Yeah, 100% right. And as you brought up there, we've been covering the regenerative and defining regenerative, and definitions are only as good as how anything's measured as well. That's a very valid point. And the NZFAP, the farm assurance plans, is one way. And as opposed to adopting an international accreditation system such as GAP, why would we create our own? Is it because it doesn't encompass everything we value as a country?
I think, the challenge we're going to have going forward, and we're seeing it now in all forms of compliance, is the interpretation of the requirement. That's not to suggest one's any better or different than the other. And I think what we're going to get used to is this term called equivalency. And that's going to mean that we can maintain our independence. So in the case of the Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, as I said earlier, we've lined up behind NZFAP and NZFAP Plus. Does that then rule out to us, say some of the dairy industry assurance programs? Well, it doesn't have to, because if we looked at those standards, and it'd be the same with GAP, there's elements of them all which are actually the same, they're just represented in a different way. So you take all the words to one side, you can grant equivalency and therefore satisfy a lot of those components, but still retain your identity, because there'll be some things in GAP that are specific to that market, or whoever uses that, as there is to dairy, as there is to meat. But I think this is the challenge we're going to see as industries respond to market and regulatory challenges. One shoe's not going to fit all, and doesn't mean one. Well, I don't know. Some people's shoes are a big deal, aren't they? But in general sense, you can have the flexibility of accommodating both.
Absolutely. And the thing is, what farmers are crying out for is a simplified system that talks to each other, that everyone's on the same page. I mean, the processing companies aligning to start with the farm assurance plan was the first tick, and then aligning it with the suppliers such as McDonald's is actually starting to find some common ground.
Oh, absolutely. Because one thing we know for sure is if we don't grapple with this, this sense of equivalency, we'll have multiple audits, which, that's what we're trying to avoid at the moment. So, the last thing you want is me showing up one day auditing you in relation to, the New Zealand Farm Assurance Program. And then because you also sheet to supply, another market, they arrive the next day. 99% of what they're going to check, we've just checked. So it's about making sure that we can say, right, if you do one, right, what is it actually that's so special or unique? And then it might be a very, very brief and short, audit, for want of a better word, than having to have we've seen this happen over the years, Sarah. We've had multiple audits on multiple days, and it doesn't go well.
Oh God, no! Farmers get sick of multiple people up their driveways because then they can't do what they need to do, which is get on and farm, and of course, satisfying everybody's different requirements. When it comes to choosing to go all the way through and verify the sustainability of the supply chain, why did you start with a meat patty, a beef burger?
It was largely because, McDonald's were a large component in this trial, and they probably accurately represented the consumer in this instance. So, they were able to define the attributes that they thought were important. And at that point, it allowed us to land on, in this case, a patty. It took it through an extra step of processing as well. So post that of the slaughter plant, we went into a grinding facility. So it just showed again that, if you wanted to take it beyond the pack house, you can align each of the steps in the chain so that you can maintain the integrity all the way through.
And when it came to the funding, co-funded with government, where does that type of funds go to in a trial like this?
Well, a lot of it is actually, that's a great question, because a lot of it is actually difficult to define. But in a lot of these instances, the value lay in bringing the participating farmers together. So, there's a cost associated with that. And if you've got people participating in a trial, there's no way you want that funded. There was investment made in relation to the draft standard. It was work around ensuring that where we felt that maybe there were matters that need to be addressed, what could we do on the basis of supporting that rather than just, leaving someone else to do it. And, a lot of moving parts behind the scenes as well, because part of this process also had to see the processing companies come into line. So 3 different meat processors. And again, we're not going to get all them to agree. Anyone that's been around as long as me or longer will understand that well. But that's not to say that each of them couldn't operate in their own right, because 9 times out of 10, we're saying the same thing, just in a different language. So, a lot of time and effort went into getting confidence that if we were doing ABC, that didn't mean the others that were doing DEF were necessarily any different. They just happened to be doing DEF. So a lot of money, a lot of time going into what will hopefully be, as a result of this too, a sustainable processing standard, which will mean that we can continue to draw it right across that whole supply chain.
And ultimately, how does this feed back in value to our beef farmers?
And that's the $60 million question, because at this stage, there's a lot of talk, as there always is, around what consumer demand might look like. That's probably being superseded at the moment by regulatory environment, right? The regulatory environment's moving a lot faster in New Zealand than the market is at the moment. So, we can translate consumer demand. We know consumers are talking about it. It's not really, it's not at a point yet where there's an access issue or a premium to be paid. So, what we've demonstrated here is the art of the possible. Yeah, we can do that, no problem. Conveniently, and I think quite fortunately, a lot of the work we promoted in this activity, especially on farm, actually leverages off what a lot of this regulatory framework is going to require anyway. I think we would have had really trouble if we'd been preaching a regulatory reform and compliance environment, and over top of that, we were arriving and saying, now we want something more. The good thing that this proved was if farmers are on board with farm environment plans and a lot of the other requirements that are coming down at them, they will actually satisfy a large portion of what these eventual sustainability claims will look like.
I think that's the words that farmers want to hear, actually, Grant. So thank you very much for that. And that all these things are interconnected and interlinked in terms of where we're heading as a country. So thank you so much for all your hard work and that you do as chair of the New Zealand Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. It is a big job, but you're the right man for it. So thank you so much, Grant Bunting there. Now, after the break, we hear from plant and food researchers, scientists and hop breeder Kerry Templeton to outline how these new hop cultivars will produce more unique flavours for our premium craft beer markets.
This is Sarah's Country, produced in alliance with Farmers Weekly, the place New Zealand farmers turn to for a trusted source of in-depth agricultural journalism. Stay connected to the matters that matter most by subscribing to My Daily Digest at farmersweekly.co.nz.
Well, for those who may know me, I'm a bit more of a wine drinker than a beer drinker, but I have been very intrigued, and particularly what on earth is a hazy? I might be able to find out in this next episode where we are talking to plant and food researchers, hop breeding scientists that are pioneering a release of a series of highly successful seedless triploid, I hope I've got that correct, cultivars. Now, it's all to do with flavour, to hit into the big fashion, which is craft beer. The breeding program focuses on developing high-performing bittering type hops and novel aromatic type hops that will be giving these unique flavours to beers in demand all around the world. Now, Plant and Food's 70 years of work with hops is paying off. And we certainly know that Kiwis love their beer, with over 200 craft breweries nationwide now. Can you believe it? And the experimentation of beer, everyone's wanting to have a different flavour experience, of course, as their point of difference. Someone who will be able to tell me what a hazy is and many other things about flavour components within hops is plant and food research scientist and devoted hop breeder Kerry Templeton. I suppose we better start with that as a first question. What makes a hazy?
Well, what makes a hazy IPA is it's a mixture of the hops and the yeast, combination of hops and the yeast, and the grain that goes in as well. So the beer's two main ingredients other than water is your malted barley and your hops. And hazy IPAs, they often put in oats and wheat as well to get a bit of haze in them. It adds flavour. It's fairly new to the scene. I say fairly new, 2 to 3 years in New Zealand anyway. And
when you talk about it as a scene, it certainly is. It's like the fashion industry you've described it as, But the thing is, it's taken I read 10 years to breed a new hop variety. So how, as a plant breeder of hops in New Zealand, do we keep up with this rapid rate of change and demand?
That's a really good question, and something we're always asking ourselves, and we're always crystal ball gazing to try and identify the latest trends in the industry. You can look to the North American market to some extent. They have a few years ahead of us generally, although in some trends we're really right behind them. Other trends we're a bit further away, and that's where we aim to be breeding hops that would fit those markets. Different, because it's, as you say, it's a fashion industry, it's always changing. We're aiming for different, so we're looking for hops with a difference, or That was the slogan a few years ago, but it's still probably apt today.
What is the process to harvest hops from planting? In terms of at what age?
Hops first year plants. So you can plant a plant in the ground in spring, and you'll get hops off it in the first year. It won't be a full crop. So hops are a perennial crop.
Right.
They'll grow every year, but the first year crop will be about a 65 to 75% crop, and the second year crop would be 85 to 95% of full production. Third year on should be full production. Second year will be very close.
The reason I ask that is there seems to be a lot of capital outlay, especially when you're converting dairy farms through Motueka into hop farms, and that return on investment if different varietals are coming through all the time.
Yeah, well, as I said, because they can get a crop off the first year, they can change relatively quickly. Hops are reasonably easy to propagate. They're clonally propagated, and they just take a cutting, stick in the ground, it'll grow. Stick in a pot, it'll grow. And you can get, each plant, you can probably get 50 to 100 cuttings off, so you can see how it can multiply up very quickly. You don't need a lot of hops to suddenly have 100,000 hops.
Yeah.
And you're in the business, really.
And when it comes to New Zealand capitalising on flavour, making it unique to New Zealand, I mean, what's the similarities to te wā that wine has in different areas, such as more cold-tolerant crops in Central Otago up to Taupua?
You're getting into an area there which I have an opinion on. I don't know if it's...
Love opinions.
I think so. Te wā in hops isn't probably quite the same as te wā in grapes, and that because hops are a very processed crop, there's the harvesting. You've got to harvest them on the right date. You've got to run them through a machine. You dry them. The different kilning systems have different just the idiosyncrasies of the different farms. How they all slightly different. You probably get that can have probably a bigger influence than the actual location you grow them. For instance, if you take a rockstar hop like Nectaron, if you grew it in Motueka region or grew it in Central Otago, it's probably going to taste very similar. And if the differences you get may not be from the fact it was grown in Central Otago, it could be from the fact that the people down there dried it in a slightly different system. So, even if they're all manufactured the same, and even if the grower harvests it one day later or earlier, that can affect the flavour. So there's a lot to going into it.
And the work that Plant and Food have been doing over 70 years is playing off now globally. What type of industry has the hop breeding been for New Zealand?
The hop industry, the breeding program, I guess, started out of a need to breed some disease resistance for a root rot that they had in the 1950s. And they quickly got on top of that and solved that problem. And ever since then, we've been breeding, like you say, it's a fashion industry. We've been targeting what the brewing industry wants. Our clients are usually growers, so where the grower tells us what they're able to sell and we breed for those targets. But it's been chasing those targets. So for a long time, alpha acids, which is the bittering component in hops, was the big thing to chase. And then some point in the 80s, they started chasing aroma hops, and now we've moved into what we'd call flavour hops, or they're not aroma hop. The description of aroma hop often defines it as a hop that is similar to a old world Czech or German hop. They call them fine. They call them what do they call them? The old world hops. Whereas what we're breeding now with flavour hops are totally different. We don't really focus much on the alpha acids or the making them look like German or European hops. We're going down our own track now. We've decided to forge our own path and make the flavour our own. The flavour that we can get out of the New Zealand hops our our own thing.
That's super cool, and there must be more to the story of a New Zealand hop for a craft beer brand. Environmental sustainability, carbon neutral is a huge claim that people are wanting, especially in the beer world. They're chasing for their brand reputation. What work can you do in plant breeding to, sort of breed in things like disease resistance so that you don't need as many chemicals and other environmental aspects that position New Zealand well for the future?
Well, one of the cool things about hops, we don't really have any major diseases other than the one they originally had, the root rot. We haven't got any fungal diseases. So in North America and Europe, they're fighting downy and powdery mildew problems, and they, I believe, have to spray quite heavily to control those diseases. We don't have any of those in New Zealand. In general, the only issue of New Zealand is two-spotted mite, which you can release a predatory mite to control. So hops can be fairly spray-free. The only thing you'd spray for in New Zealand would be two-spotted mite, and I believe that's fairly rare within the industry these days. They use predatory mites, which are biological control, to control it. So it's we are looking at disease resistance as a way of preempting the chance. If these diseases got to New Zealand, we aren't specifically breeding for it, but we're looking at using DNA technology to identify some genes involved in disease resistance to implement in our program.
Yeah, just yet another example of gene technology such as CRISPR being of benefit going forward to New Zealand's brand in the hop world. Kerry, for those who are interested in farming and growing hops, what sort of return per hectare and sort of its future is it looking like? Or is it still very localised in areas such as Motueka? Or is there starting to see a bit of a spread across the country?
So at the moment, it's localised within the, Nelson region. It's within an hour drive of the Motueka, Nelson area region. There are people trialling hops in the Central Otago region, I believe relatively successfully. I can't see any reason, honestly, you couldn't grow hops probably from the Central Plateau, North Island, all the way to the bottom of the South Island. Only issue I could see with that is having access to the knowledge on how to grow them. It's a fairly specialist crop to grow, and without that in-depth knowledge of the crop, you're going to struggle to find people to actually, you're going to struggle to get your orchard to perform, your garden to perform optimally, and it's a big learning curve.
And I suppose once people are in the hop world, they become pretty dedicated, as you have been as a hop breeder, devoted as well as being a scientist for plant and food research. Thank you so much, Kerry Templeton, for taking the time to round out this week's Changemaker show here on Cirrus Country. As always, an absolutely fascinating Changemaker show here on Cirrus Country. I love sitting down to record the Changemaker show every Wednesday, because I don't know about you, but I leave with a whole head full of knowledge, but also inspiration and optimism about our industry, the industry that is producing fine food and beverages and fashion, and it's super exciting. After I spoke to Kerry Templeton there, he explained some incredible statistics with me. He said, for instance, the hazy IPA, he said it's got I think he said about a third more, 3 times more hops in it than it has any other craft beers. So as the fashion of hazy takes off, that means they're using more hops in terms of quantity. And globally, craft beer makes up between 2 to 3% of beer produced and consumed in the world, but it uses 25% of the hops. And he said, the likes of your DB drafts, our traditional New Zealand beers, used to use, 1 portion of hops to what a craft beer now uses 10 milligrams of hops per litre. So the rise of craft beer as a fashion is certainly leading on to a bustling industry. Fantastic show. Absolutely incredible. If you'd like to get in touch with any of the guests we've had on the show, please email me, sarah@sarahscountry.com, because I feel I've been put on this earth to connect people, and I absolutely get thrill out of seeing what may come of it. So please don't hesitate to get in touch. In the meantime, that's all we've got time for. This week, we're going to be back on Monday with our Newsmaker show, brought together in alliance with Farmers Weekly. And we're working on a very exciting Opinion Maker show where we unpack how we're going to find 50,000 people needed in our industry. A statistic that at the time Minister for Agriculture Nathan Guy pointed out in 2014. What on earth have we done about it in the last 7 years? Because there is a gaping labour shortage. We will have on the program a lot of opinion around how to solve this challenge, as well as next Wednesday more change makers for you. In the meantime, have a wonderful rest of your week. Great weekend wherever you are in New Zealand and around the world. In the meantime, take care of yourself and your family. Ka kite anō.